Despite the popularity of such anime as One Punch Man, Bleach, One Piece, and so many more, Akira Toriyama's Dragon Ball franchise remains one of the most important and popular of all time. A big part of the series' popularity has to do with its compelling characters and storylines, and its influence on so many of the series that came after it. However, there's a lot that went into making the franchise so incredibly popular. When Akira Toriyama created Dragon Ball, the mangaka had no idea how iconic the franchise would become. Today, the series stands as one of the most popular and well-known anime series of all time. With over 500 chapters and even more episodes to its name, Dragon Ball has become the poster child of action-packed shonen goodness. However, there are some anime enthusiasts who shy away from the franchise. The long-running series can be intimidating for people who don't know the first thing about Dragon Ball, but don't worry, we're here to help. We've gone ahead and broken down Dragon Ball into its elements, separating the franchise's manga from its anime series and feature films. So if you've been curious about Dragon Ball and its record-breaking success, then we've got the answers for you. Let's start at the beginning, shall we? Before Dragon Ball was adapted into an anime, it was a manga. The story was written and illustrated by Akira Toriyama between November 1984 and May 1995. Titled Dragon Ball, the series was published entirely by Weekly Shonen Jump before Shisha bound them into Tankobon trades for readers. Created by Toriyama, the series grew out of the creator's boredom growing up in rural Japan. He turned to drawing in order to occupy himself and found he enjoyed the hobby. As he grew up, he came to combine the genres that he loved with his art. However, it took a lot of time and struggle for Toriyama to get his big break. That eventually came with 1978's Wonder Island, which was his official debut in Weekly Shonen Jump. This helped him to start building a fan base, eventually leading to Dr. Slump, which won a number of coveted awards. This then in turn led to the creation of Dragon Ball. Akira wrote the series shortly after he gained success with the manga Dr. Slump in 1980. The comedy gave him the clout to pursue Dragon Ball, and the artist jumped at the chance to publish his new story. While Dragon Ball is known for its over-the-top action, the series did not always focus on that. The manga was less about Super Saiyans and more about mythical hijinks when it debuted. Loosely inspired by the Chinese tale Journey to the West, Dragon Ball began as a playful mix between comedy and slapstick action, before later chapters delved into the more intense action sequences. Dragon Ball. When Dragon Ball hit shelves, readers ate up the series and critics praised its complex stories. As such, Toei Animation quickly secured animation rights to the series and premiered its anime adaptation in February 1986. Dragon Ball covers the first 159 chapters of the manga in about 153 episodes. The series ran for more than 3 years, and it only ended to divide Akira's story into two distinct eras. The original series followed protagonist Son Goku as a child in search of 7 wish-granting items known as Dragon Balls. Trained in martial arts, Goku begins traveling world to acquire the mystical objects and fights with lots of baddies along the way. Dragon Ball Z. Shortly after Dragon Ball ended, Toei Animation began work on its sequel, Dragon Ball Z. The second series debuted the same month that predecessor ended and introduced fans to a more serious, action-packed story than they had seen before. Dragon Ball Z follows an older Goku as he and his comrades, known as Z-Fighters, defend the planet against nefarious, overpowered villains who seek to destroy it. The series also introduces a second generation of characters to fans. For instance, Goku now has kids of his own named Gohan and Goten, who he trains. When it comes to popularity, Dragon Ball Z reigns supreme in the fandom. This show is one which grabbed the attention of foreign audiences and ushered in a new era of anime lovers. Dragon Ball GT. If you talk about Dragon Ball GT with fans, you may want to speak lightly. Opinions about the show are varied to say the least, since its canonicity has been questioned ever since it premiered in 1996. Dragon Ball GT is a sequel to the Dragon Ball Z series. The show is set 5 years after the latter ended and sees Goku turned back into a child. The hero then travels across the universe to find the Black Star Dragon Balls, which de-aged him, and they also run into an adversary who is bent on ending the Saiyan race during their travels. Most fans tend to frown upon Dragon Ball GT. Unlike its contemporaries, this anime is not based on any manga created by Akira. Instead, it tells an original story conceived by Toei Animation. As such, die-hard Dragon Ball lovers argue that show is not considered canon to the overall franchise, though Akira has referred to Dragon Ball GT as a side story of the original anime. Dragon Ball Kai. After the dismal reception to Dragon Ball GT, Toei Animation refrained from rolling out any new series. However, they did go ahead and re-release Dragon Ball Z under the new name Dragon Ball Kai. Toei Animation created the remake in honor of the franchise's 20th anniversary, and of course, the overhaul would hopefully make fans forget the bad taste that Dragon Ball GT left in their mouths. The studio took the original Dragon Ball Z series and digitally traced over the animations to make the show look more contemporary. Dragon Ball Kai also removed content from the sequel, which wasn't sourced from Akira's manga. The move ultimately cut Dragon Ball Kai down to 167 from 291, and fans were pleased to see much of that filler go. Dragon Ball Super. Once Dragon Ball Kai ended, fans were left in a perpetual limbo. No one knew whether Toei Animation would produce another series after Dragon Ball GT failed to impress audiences. But after an 18-year wait, the company finally came through and released a much better series titled Dragon Ball Super. Dragon Ball Super acts a sequel to Dragon Ball Z and takes place after Goku's planet is at peace. The hero and his friends have all but returned to their normal way of life when another intergalactic threat comes knocking at their atmosphere. The so-called God of Destruction is eager to take on Goku after hearing about the hero's strength, and the baddie is willing to end the universe to do so. While the anime is not based off any of Akira's manga, he did create the series. The artist also provided character designs for Toei Animation to use as inspiration, and fans have been grateful for Akira's return. Since the show debuted, more than 130 episodes have aired, and Dragon Ball Super began simulcasting to the US so fans could watch the much-awaited series. Film spin-offs. When an anime becomes popular, it is expected that the series will spin off an film or two to satisfy fans. So when you consider how popular Dragon Ball has become, then it is not surprising to hear the franchise has spawned 19 films. The first Dragon Ball movie was released back in December 1986 when The Legend of Shenlong hit Japanese theaters. The most recent film, Resurrection of F, premiered in 2015. These movies are often collected alongside several feature-length television specials which the franchise has produced. For instance, an hour-long crossover special between Dragon Ball, One Piece, and Toriko aired back in 2013 to the delight of anime fans everywhere. Video game adaptations. If you thought the number of Dragon Ball films was huge, just wait until you hear how many video games belong to the franchise. Since 1986, dozens of console games and arcade titles have been released, which feature Goku and his crew of Z-Fighters. Now, in 2012, there are well over 90 video games housed under the acclaimed franchise. For decades, many Dragon Ball video games were kept abroad in Japan due to licensing concerns. The first game was released in September 1986 for the Super Cassette Vision, as that was before the time of consoles like PlayStation. The most recent game, Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2, just debuted in North America for current-gen consoles like the PS5 and Xbox One, and so far, the game's reviews are on the favorable side. You'd be surprised to know that the Dragon Ball franchise has made a reported total revenue of at least $24 billion, most of which comes from the manga and anime sector within the franchise. However, considering the additional projects that are inspired by Dragon Ball, the total revenue could be closer to $30 billion. However, other aspects of the Dragon Ball franchise are definitely influential as well, although most of the money is always made through manga and anime. For example, Dragon Ball Z Dokkan Battle by Bandai Namco has been really successful out of all Dragon Ball games to date, bringing in a peak of $620 million in 2018, with user spending of up to $566 million in 2019. The same can be said for other Dragon Ball games, including the Dragon Ball Legends game on mobile. Dragon Ball Legends was only released in May 2018, but has racked up over $400 million in gross revenue, meaning that the total amount of money that the Dragon Ball franchise has actually made could be well over the reported estimates. It wouldn't be wrong to say that the Dragon Ball franchise has won the heart of every anime lover around the world. That's all for today. Let us know what you think about the Dragon Ball franchise, and check out our other thought-provoking videos on our channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and click that bell icon for notifications of brand new content posted regularly.